Hello wonderful people, welcome to another tutorial. So in today's tutorial I'm going to teach you how to cut this very beautiful vintage shirt dress, and if you are ready guys, let's just get into the video. So the first thing to do is to fold the fabrics into four, considering the widest part of the body. For me, it's my hips. I'll be considering the hips measurement to fold the fabrics into four. Then after folding the fabrics into four, I left about 2 inches for the button rack allowance. Then after doing that, I measured my shoulder. My shoulder is 14 divided by 2, that is 7. I measured the 7 inches by the shoulder line, and I also went ahead to measure the armhole. So for my armhole is 7 inches, is 14 all round divided by 2, that is 7. I also added half inches allowance for the shoulder slope, so I used 7.5 inches for the armhole. Then having done that, the next thing I measured with my half length, which is 14.5 inches plus half inches seam allowance for the shoulder line. I also went ahead to place my hips line measurement, which is 8 to 10 inches below the waistline. So I added 10 inches, making 25, waistline making 25, and I chopped out the hips line measurement also. So my bust divided by 4 is 9 inches, and now marking the 9 inches, I went ahead to add 1.5 inches seam allowance for the bust. Remember that this is a shirt and it does not really have to be too tight. So at the waistline also, my waist divided by 4 is 7, and I added 2 inches allowance at the waistline because I don't want it to be too tight. Remember, we are working with a shirt and it should not be too tight. So the next thing I measured my hips divided by 4, that is 10, and I added 2 inches allowance for the hips line, and I just connected the lines together. So remember, we added 1.5 inches for the bust, added 2 inches at the waistline, and I added about 2 inches also for the hips line. And that is because when we are working with a shirt should not be really too tight. It's too tight, what it does is that it makes the button not properly relaxed. So the allowance we are adding in excess is just for the button to be able to relax well, and that is it. So for this particular shirt I'm cutting, the back is longer than the front, but because we are cutting both the front and the back together, what I'll be considering is the length of the back, which is 46 inches. Then later when I finish cutting both, I will take away the measurement for the front. So the next thing I did is that I measured the length of the back. I consider the back, like I said, so which is 46 inches, and I just placed the measurement down to the hem. And having done that, I'll be using the same measurement at the hips region, even at the lower part of the hem of the shirt, and that is because at the lower part of the shirt also is not too tight. The lower part of the shirt will not be too tight. Remember that we are adding a button to be able to relax well. The lower part will also not be too tight. So I just connected the hem to the hips line and made it fit into each other. And the next thing I did is that I placed the neck measurement of the shirt. So I'll be considering the back also for this, because the front neckline will be much more deeper than the back, and we are cutting both the back and the front together. Considering the one with the least neck depth, which is the back. So for the back, for the width of the shirt, we'll be using 2.5 inches for the width, and for the neck depth of the back, I'll be using 1.5 inches, half inches for the shoulder seam allowance, and 1 inches for the actual neckline for the back, which will hold the collar. I made a curve around it, and I curved it even into the button rack of the front, and that is because the button rack of the front is still lower than that of the back, so there is no worries about it. Remember, we are cutting both the front and the back together, and we have to consider each other before cutting them. So the next thing I did, I went ahead also to consider my shoulder line. So I'll be considering the shoulder line for the back first. Then after removing the front from the back, I will go ahead to place the chest measurement at the front. So I use the exact 7 down into the armhole for the shoulder line of both the front and the back. And having done that, I connected the neckline. I removed about half inches for the shoulder slope, and I connected the shoulder slope into the neckline. And after I was done, I just cut out all the shoved measurements just the way it's appearing by the camera. So the next thing I did after that, I separated the front and the back pattern from each other. Remember that the back pattern is the one without a slit in the middle. So the back pattern is a cut and fold, while the front pattern is a cut times 2. And that is because the front is going to hold the button. So after I separated both of them, I did well to mark the 2 inches measurement for the button line to serve as a guide before cutting the neckline. And after I placed the 2 inches measurement for the button line, I went ahead to chalk out the neckline measurements of the front. So for the front depth, I'll be using 3 inches, and I'll still be retaining the same 2.5 inches width we use for both the front and the back. So I connected the neckline of the front, and I ended it at the side of, I ended it before the 2 inches of the button rack. So for the button rack, I slanted the line upward, I tilted the line upward, and that's because by the time we want to fold in the button rack, if I don't tilt it up, the fabrics will be dropping inside. It won't lay properly with the neckline, and that is the reason why it's very advisable to tilt it out, so that by the time you want to fold it inside, you will get a perfect shape and you can just easily trim out the excesses. So after doing that, I also went ahead to alternate the chest line of the front. Remember that the chest line at the back is more wider than that for the front. So my chest line is 12 inches, and I went ahead to place 6 inches by the middle of the shoulder line. So I marked the 6 inches and I connected it back into the armhole to have the perfect front armhole measurements, and this will prevent bulging at the armhole in the front. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the neckline measurement. I cut out the shoved out neckline measurement, and I also cut out the shoved out shoulder measurement. So this is basically the first 2 alteration we are having in the front bodice pattern. So the first alteration is the one for the neck, the second one is for the shoulder line, and the last one we'll be doing is for the length of the front. Remember that the back length is longer than that of the front, so we'll also be cutting out the excesses of the front to make it lower to that of the back, and that is the third alteration we'll be having in the front shirt dress. So instead of the 46 inches we use for the back, I'll be using 42 inches for the front. So what I did, I marked out the 42 inches all over the front, and I just chalked it out. I went up by 2 inches also, so I marked 40 inches, and that is because that will serve for the point in which I'm going to mark out the curvy part of the shirt. Remember, if you look at the video very well, you notice that there is a kind of curved part in the front shirt and even for the back also. So the 40 inches is where the joining for both the front and the back will end, and after that we are just going to curve it back into the end, which is 42 for the front and 46 for the back. Having done that, the next thing to do is to cut out the shoved measurements, and this is the last alteration we'll be having for the front pattern. So I hope you are enjoying the tutorial, guys. Please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, and also if you have any question, go ahead to drop it in the comment section, and I promise to reply to all questions. And please turn on all notification bells so that you can get informed once I post a new tutorial, which I definitely know that you would love to learn from. So for the side pockets of the shirt, we are going to place the measurement on the front pattern, and I measured my half length, which is 14.5, and I went down by 1 inches after, making it 15.5. I chalked out the 15.5 inches measurement. Then after doing that, I went ahead to measure the opening of the pocket, which I'll be using 6 inches for. So this 6 inches we are leaving behind is the opening for the pocket, and that place is not going to be stitched permanently, as the pocket is going to sit in between it. And after doing that, the next thing I did, I placed launches at the marked measurement so that it can serve as a guide by the time I want to place in the pocket. So that is all the alteration we have for the front, and the next thing we are going to work on now is the back pattern. Just like the way we did for the front, I marked the 40 inches also for the back. Like I said, that is the place, that is where the joining for both the front and the back will end. So the next thing to do is to curve the 40 inches and curve it into the hem of the shirt. But before doing that, I marked 8 inches, and that is because I want the flat side to be wide enough. So I marked 8 inches, and after I marked the 8 inches, I made a curve starting from the 8 inches into where we marked for the 40 inches of the shirt dress, just like the way it's appearing by the camera. I cut it out, and this is the last alteration we have also for the back pattern. So the next thing to cut out is the pocket, and for the pocket width I'll be using 14 inches. I went ahead to fold it into 4, that is 7 and into 4. So I'll be cutting out both pockets together, and that is the reason why I folded it into 4. So for the length of the pocket, I'll be using 13 inches. I marked out the 13 inches, I chalked it out all the way, and when I marked it out, the next thing I did, I used my scissors to cut it out. I also placed a lunge in the middle of the pocket, of both pockets, and after I was done with that, I opened the fabrics into two equal parts like it has been, and I just slitted it open to give us the two sides of the pockets. So for the collar, I'm going to be considering my neckline measurements. My round neck measurement is 14, and I'll be cutting it on fold, so I'll be using 7 inches, and I chalked the 7 inches measurement out, and I also added 1 inches seam allowance to it. So remember that our neckline for the collar is also a circular shape. So what I'm going to do, I went up by 1 inches in order to achieve the circular shape. And having gone up by 1 inches, I got the midpoint of the fabric. So after getting the midpoint of the fabric, the next thing I did, I connected the 1 inches to the midpoint, just like the way it's appearing by the camera. I just slanted it into the midpoint of the collar. So this particular first one I'm cutting is the collar stand, and I'll be using 1.5 inches for it. So after connecting the circular shape, the next thing I did, I went ahead to measure 1.5 inches all through, even to the center of the collar stand, just like the way it's appearing by the camera. And having done that, the next thing I did is that I just cut out the chalked measurements. I placed the collar stand on another piece of fabrics in order to cut out the collar stand cover. So for this, it will be 1 inch longer than the collar stand. I placed a lunge at the center of the collar just to be able to know it while placing it on the neckline of the shirt. So after doing that, I measured 1 inch all round at the hem. Take note, at the end of the collar stand, and I just chalked it out the same way we chalked out last stand, and I cut it out. So for the second panel of the collar, I just did well to re-measure the collar stand. Then having done that, remember that I said my reference is 14 inches. Then I subtracted 2 inches from it. So for the second rack of the collar, I'll be using 12 inches. I folded the fabrics into 2, and I measured 6 inches. Then unfold, that will be 12 inches. And having done that, I'll be using a length of 4 inches, and unfold, that will be 2 inches, because we are still going to add a collar stay and also turn it over. So I used 4 inches. I marked out the 4 inches and I cut it out. So I folded the collar into two, just like the way it's appearing by the camera. I folded it first into two, and I also went ahead to fold it again, making it into 4. Then when I was done with that, I trimmed out 1/4 inch by the side of the collar, and I did that because I wanted it to relax well at the front. So I just trimmed out just 1/4 inch, and I just blend it smoothly back into the collar, just like the way it's appearing by the camera. So the last thing to cut out for the shirt is the sleeve, and it's a basic sleeve, it's a short sleeve. So for the length of the sleeve, I'll be using 9 inches, and I also added 2 inches hem allowance by the hem of the sleeve. So for the round sleeve, my round sleeve is 14 divided by 2, that is 7, but I used 8 inches, and that is because I don't want it to be shortened. If it's in excess, I can just easily trim out the excess. So I used 8 inches, and I also added 1 inch seam allowance for the round sleeve of it. Then I marked that out. Then after doing that, I went ahead to get the midpoint of the round sleeve, which is 9 inches. Remember that our sleeve is already on fold, so I got the midpoint and I stroked it all the way to the shoulder line, and this will help us to get our shoulder cap. So I marked the shoulder cap, which I'll be using 4 inches. So you can get this basically by measuring your shoulder to directly to where your armhole is. So for mine is about 4 inches, and some people can use 5 inches. It actually depends on how tall or how short the person is. So I measured the 4 inches, and when I was done, I made a slant line starting from the shoulder line to where the shoulder cap is, just like the way it's appearing by the camera. So to get our shoulder slope, I'm going to create a curve from the center of the shoulder to the midpoint and even to the hem of the shoulder. So for the one starting from the shoulder to the midpoint, is going to go across the line, like it's going to go above the line, and the one starting from the middle to where the shoulder cap is going to go beneath the line. So I just hope you get it, and you can just see it directly also the way it appears by the camera. So for the band of the sleeve, I used 7 inches because I wanted it to be free. My actual band is 12 and into 2 is 6, but I used 7, and I also added 1 inches allowance. But you might just want to measure yours if you want to cut out a basic sleeve for yourself. So, and after doing that, I just connected it back into the shoulder line, and when I was done, I tilted the line outward towards the hem so that when I want to fold the hem inside, it does not go in. And I just cut out the shocked measurements just like the way it's appearing by the camera. I also placed a lunge at the center of the sleeve so as it can serve as a guide when I want to connect it to the armhole of the shirt dress. So guys, that is all basically for the cutting. So for the front of the shirt, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to go to the pressing table, and I'm going to use this hemming gum to hold down the button rack allowance we left, and I'm just going to fold it just like the way I'm doing it by the camera. Fold it, then hold it down with the hemming gum, and I'm also going to do the same thing for the other side, and that is for the shirt. Also for the hem of the sleeve, also I'm going to have the hemming gum just to hold it down, and I'm still going to stitch it later. So guys, you can see that the shirt dress is looking so beautiful. So just stay tuned for the sewing, and that will be the part 2, and I'm going to upload it very soon. Just make sure that you turn on your notification bell so that you can get informed as soon as I post it.